The train whistle blasted through the crisp autumn air as tears streamed down Flora Daniels' face, her gloved hands clutching a letter that had shattered her world mere minutes ago. The dusty platform of Sweetwater Junction, Colorado, was nearly deserted in the fading light of 1878, save for a few travelers collecting their belongings and a lone figure leaning against a post, watching her with quiet intensity. Flora crumpled the letter in her fist, the promise of marriage from her fiancé replaced with words of betrayal. Harold had found another woman in San Francisco, someone more suitable for his social standing, and wouldn't be meeting her train after all. After selling everything to journey west and start a new life, she stood abandoned in a town she'd never heard of until today, where the train had made an unexpected stop due to mechanical troubles. "Miss," a deep voice broke through her despair. "Pardon my intrusion, but are you waiting for someone?" Flora looked up through tear-blurred eyes at the tall man before her. His face was partially shadowed by a well-worn Stetson, but she could see kind eyes studying her with concern. Broad shoulders filled out a denim jacket, and she noticed the telltale signs of a working cowboy: scuffed boots, weathered hands, and a quiet confidence that seemed as natural as breathing. "No," she replied, her voice breaking. "Not anymore." The stranger nodded slowly, taking in her fine traveling dress, her small trunk, and the obvious distress etched across her features. "Train's moving on in 10 minutes. You staying in Sweetwater?" Flora shook her head, desperation suddenly gripping her. "I have nowhere to go." "The man who promised to marry me." Her voice trailed off as fresh tears threatened. The cowboy shifted his weight, glancing at the station master who was preparing to signal the train's departure. With a decision seemingly made, he extended his hand. "Name's Ethan Morgan," he said. "I've got a wagon outside and a ranch that could use an extra pair of hands for a spell if you're willing to work. It ain't charity, miss, just decent folk helping decent folk." Flora hesitated, every lesson about propriety screaming in her mind, yet what choice did she have? Return east with nothing, stay alone in a strange town. The train whistle blew again, more insistent this time. "I'm Flora Daniels," she said finally, placing her trembling hand in his calloused one. "And I accept your offer, Mr. Morgan." With surprising gentleness, Ethan took her trunk with one hand and led her away from the platform with the other, his steps sure and steady against the uncertain ground beneath her feet. The wagon ride stretched through miles of open range as the sunset painted the Colorado sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Flora sat stiffly beside Ethan, keenly aware of how improper her situation was, yet unable to summon the energy to worry properly. Every bump in the road reminded her how far she'd come from Boston's cobblestone streets. "What kind of work were you expecting to find out west, Miss Daniels?" Ethan asked, breaking the lengthy silence. "I was a teacher back east," she replied, staring at the distant mountains. "But Harold, my former fiancé, wrote that teaching positions were scarce where we were to settle. I had hoped." She stopped herself, not wanting to reveal how naively she'd planned her future. "Teachers are worth their weight in gold out here," Ethan said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Sweetwater's school is just a one-room affair, but last I heard, they were looking for someone educated to take over. Current teacher's expecting her third child." Flora turned to him, surprise momentarily replacing her sorrow. "Truly?" Ethan nodded. "People out here value learning. Hard to come by, though. Most ranchers' children get basic reading and figures at home, but proper schooling, that's precious." For the first time since reading Harold's letter, Flora felt a flicker of hope. "I would need somewhere to stay to establish myself before applying. My sister Amelia manages the house at our ranch. She'd welcome the company of another woman. The bunkhouse is full of cowhands who'd sooner tangle with a rattlesnake than discuss literature." His mouth quirked into a half-smile that transformed his weathered face. As they crested a hill, Ethan pointed to a cluster of buildings nestled in a valley beside a winding creek. "Morgan Ranch. Nothing fancy, but it's home." The main house was larger than Flora expected, a sturdy two-story structure with a wide porch. Several outbuildings, corrals, and a bunkhouse completed the settlement. Smoke curled from the chimney into the darkening sky, and warm light spilled from windows that promised comfort after the long journey. A woman emerged onto the porch as they approached, her silhouette backlit by lantern light. When they drew closer, Flora could see she was perhaps a few years older than herself, with the same straight brow and determined chin as Ethan. "You're late for supper," the woman called, then paused when she spotted Flora. "And you've brought company." Ethan helped Flora down from the wagon. "Amelia, this is Miss Flora Daniels. She's had some trouble and needs lodging for a spell." "Miss Daniels, my sister Amelia Morgan." Amelia's surprise quickly transformed to warm hospitality. "Any friend of Ethan's is welcome. Come in before the food gets cold." "I'm hardly a friend," Flora began awkwardly. "Your brother found me abandoned at the train station and that makes you family until proven otherwise," Amelia interrupted with a smile, taking Flora's arm and leading her inside. "Ethan has good instincts about people, always has." The interior of the Morgan home was simple but comfortable, with sturdy furniture and touches that spoke of a woman's influence: embroidered cushions, framed photographs, and shelves of books. The dining table was set for two, but Amelia quickly added another place setting. "Wash up and join us," she said, pointing Flora to a basin of water in the corner. "You can tell us your story over supper." Over a meal of beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie, Flora shared her tale leaving Boston after her parents' deaths, the correspondence with Harold, his promises, and finally, his betrayal. Amelia made sympathetic sounds at all the right moments while Ethan listened silently, his expression darkening at the mention of Harold's abandonment. "Men like that deserve a special place in hell," Amelia declared when Flora finished. "But their loss is our gain. You'll stay here as long as you need, and I'll introduce you to Mrs. Pembroke at the school committee tomorrow." "I couldn't impose," Flora began. "Nonsense," Ethan said, his first words since they'd sat down. "The guest room is sitting empty, and good teachers don't fall from the sky in these parts." His certainty silenced her protests, and exhaustion suddenly washed over Flora like a tide. Amelia noticed immediately and showed her to a small but clean bedroom on the second floor. "Rest now," Amelia said, squeezing her hand. "Things always look clearer in the morning light." Alone in the unfamiliar room, Flora unpacked her nightclothes with trembling hands. Everything she owned fit in one trunk, a sobering thought for a woman who once had a house full of belongings. Yet as she slipped between cool sheets and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of a ranch settling down for the night, she felt an unexpected sense of peace. Harold's betrayal still stung, but perhaps fate had other plans for her in this wild, beautiful country. Dawn arrived with golden light streaming through the curtains and the distant sounds of ranch life already in motion. Flora dressed in her plainest dress, pinned up her auburn hair, and made her way downstairs, where she found Amelia kneading dough at the kitchen table. "Good morning," Amelia greeted cheerfully. "Sleep well, better than expected," Flora admitted, moving to help. "May I assist with breakfast? You're a guest, but I won't turn down willing hands. Coffee's hot if you'd like to pour us each a cup." The two women worked together, and Flora found herself relaxing in Amelia's straightforward company. They were setting plates on the table when Ethan entered, his clothes and boots already showing signs of early morning chores. "Morning," he said, nodding to both women. His gaze lingered on Flora a moment longer, taking in her simpler appearance. "You look more comfortable today." Flora felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Traveling clothes are made for appearance, not practicality. I'm afraid most of my wardrobe is similarly impractical for ranch life." "We can remedy that," Amelia said. "After breakfast, we'll see Mrs. Pembroke about the teaching position, then stop by the mercantile. A few sturdy skirts and shirtwaists will serve you better here than Boston fashions." True to her word, after breakfast, Amelia hitched a wagon and drove Flora into Sweetwater Junction. The town looked different in daylight, smaller than it had seemed the previous evening, but more vibrant. A single main street housed the essential businesses: mercantile, bank, sheriff's office, saloon, and a small whitewashed church. At the far end stood a modest building with a bell tower. "The schoolhouse," Amelia explained, guiding the wagon toward it. "Mrs. Pembroke lives in the yellow house just behind." Mrs. Pembroke proved to be a formidable woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and intelligent eyes that assessed Flora shrewdly. After reviewing Flora's teaching credentials and questioning her thoroughly about her educational philosophy, the older woman nodded with satisfaction. "Miss Daniels, your qualifications exceed our expectations. The position is yours if you want it. We can offer room and board plus $20 a month. Term starts in 2 weeks." Flora's heart leaped. "I accept, Mrs. Pembroke, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," the woman said with a wry smile. "You'll have 20 children ages 6 to 16, most of whom would rather be helping on their family ranches than conjugating verbs. But they're good children who deserve a proper education." Walking back to the wagon, Flora felt lighter than she had in months. "I can't believe it happened so quickly," she told Amelia. "In Boston, such positions required endless interviews and references." Amelia laughed. "Out here, finding someone who can read Shakespeare and calculate figures is miracle enough. Now let's get you some proper clothes." At the mercantile, Amelia helped Flora select 3 serviceable skirts, several shirtwaists, a warm coat for the approaching winter, and sturdy boots. When Flora protested the expense, Amelia waved her concern away. "Consider it an advance on your teaching salary. You can repay it from your first month's wages." They were loading the packages into the wagon when a group of cowboys rode into town, laughing and joking among themselves. Flora recognized Ethan among them, his tall figure unmistakable even from a distance. The men dismounted outside the saloon, but Ethan spotted the women and walked over instead. "How did it go with Mrs. Pembroke?" he asked. "Flora's officially Sweetwater's new teacher," Amelia announced proudly. "Starting in 2 weeks." Something like approval flickered in Ethan's eyes. "That's good news. The children will be fortunate to have you, Miss Daniels. Thank you for your confidence, Mr. Morgan, though you've yet to see me teach." "I recognize capability when I see it," he replied simply. "Amelia, I need to discuss the cattle drive with the men. We'll be home for supper." As he walked away, Flora found herself watching his retreating figure with unexpected interest. There was something compelling about his quiet strength and straightforward manner, so different from Harold's flowery words and empty promises. "He likes you," Amelia said casually as they climbed back into the wagon, Flora startled. "I'm sure that's not true. He's simply being kind to someone in need." "My brother is fair and decent to everyone," Amelia agreed, "but he doesn't usually notice women much, too busy with the ranch." "Yet he watches you when you're not looking." Flora didn't know how to respond to that, so she changed the subject, asking Amelia about the upcoming school term and her future pupils. But as they drove back to the ranch, she found herself thinking of Ethan's steady gaze and the warmth she'd felt when he'd approved of her new position. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Flora divided her time between helping Amelia with household chores and preparing for the school term. She read through the available textbooks, organized lessons, and visited the schoolhouse daily to clean and arrange it to her satisfaction. Several families came to meet her, bringing their children to introduce them to their new teacher. In the evenings, she often found herself sitting on the porch with Ethan, listening to his stories about the ranch, the land, and the people who had settled this wild territory. He spoke sparingly, but with passion about things that mattered to him: the welfare of his animals, the responsibility to his cowhands, the beauty of the land in all seasons. "What brought you out west?" Flora asked one evening as they watched the sunset paint the distant mountains. "Were you born here?" Ethan shook his head. "Born in Pennsylvania." Father brought us west after the war. He'd served in the Union Army and couldn't settle back into civilian life back east. Bought this land when it was nothing but wild prairie. We built everything you see here. You must have been very young. 14. Amelia was 16. Mother had passed during the war, so it was just the three of us. Father died 5 years ago. His lungs never recovered from the damage at Andersonville Prison. Left the ranch to Amelia and me. I'm sorry for your loss, Flora said softly. Ethan nodded his acknowledgement. Life out here teaches you to face loss and keep moving forward. The land doesn't wait for grief to pass. Something in his words resonated deeply with Flora, who was still healing from her parents' deaths and Harold's betrayal. Yes, she said. I'm beginning to understand that. Their eyes met in the gathering twilight, and for a moment, Flora felt a connection that transcended words. Then Ethan cleared his throat and stood. Early start tomorrow. Good night, Miss Daniels. Flora, she said impulsively. Please call me Flora. He paused, the hint of a smile touching his lips. Good night, Flora. Good night, Ethan. The following days brought cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color to the aspens along the creek. The day before school was to begin, Ethan offered to drive Flora into town so she could make final preparations at the schoolhouse. The ride was pleasant, with Ethan pointing out landmarks and sharing bits of local history. At the schoolhouse, he surprised her by rolling up his sleeves and helping move desks into the arrangement she preferred. You didn't have to do this, Flora said, watching him lift a heavy bookcase with ease. Wanted to, he replied simply. Besides, some of these students are from my ranch hands' families. Their education matters to me. As they worked together, Flora found herself stealing glances at him the way the sunlight through the windows highlighted the golden strands in his brown hair, how his forearms flexed as he moved furniture, the little furrow of concentration between his brows. They were interrupted by the arrival of a well-dressed man who entered the schoolhouse with an air of authority. Miss Daniels, I presume? I'm Vernon Hollister, chairman of the town council. Flora smoothed her skirt and extended her hand. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Hollister. Hollister's gaze flicked dismissively over Ethan before returning to Flora with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I wanted to personally welcome our new teacher to Sweetwater. Perhaps you would join me for dinner this evening at the hotel. We could discuss your role in our community. Before Flora could respond, Ethan stepped forward. Miss Daniels is joining us for a celebration dinner at the ranch tonight. It's already arranged. Hollister's smile tightened. Another time, then. Good day, Miss Daniels. With a curt nod to Ethan, he departed. We don't have a celebration planned, Flora said once they were alone. We do now, Ethan replied, his jaw set in a hard line. Hollister owns the bank and the hotel, thinks that makes him owner of the town. He's not a man you want to be alone with. Flora raised an eyebrow. I can handle unwanted attention, Mr. Morgan. Never doubted it, he said, his expression softening. But your first day teaching should start without complications. Hollister creates complications. On the ride back to the ranch, Flora found herself studying Ethan's profile. You don't trust easily, do you? He considered her question before answering. Trust is earned out here. Land doesn't lie, weather doesn't pretend, animals don't deceive, people, he shrugged. People are complicated. Yes, they are, Flora agreed softly, thinking of Harold. But some are worth the risk of trusting. Ethan glanced at her, something warm flickering in his eyes. Some are. That evening, true to his word, Ethan and Amelia prepared a special dinner to celebrate Flora's new position. Several of the ranch hands joined them, and the kitchen was filled with laughter, good food, and stories. Flora found herself relaxing into this newfound camaraderie, so different from the formal dinners of her Boston upbringing. After the meal, one of the cowboys produced a fiddle and began to play. The furniture was pushed back and impromptu dancing began. Flora watched in delight as Amelia was twirled around by a young cowboy named Thomas. May I have this dance? Ethan's voice came from beside her, his hand extended. Flora hesitated. I only know formal dances from back east. Just follow my lead, he said, drawing her gently to her feet. His hand at her waist was warm and steady as he guided her through the steps of a simple country dance. Flora stumbled at first, unused to the lively tempo, but Ethan's patience never wavered. Soon she was laughing and moving with more confidence, caught up in the joy of the moment. When the music slowed to a waltz, Ethan drew her slightly closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're a quick learner, Miss Daniels." "A good teacher makes all the difference, Mr. Morgan," she replied, suddenly aware of how his proximity affected her, the scent of soap and leather, the strength in his arms, the unexpected gentleness of his touch. The evening ended too soon, and as Flora prepared for bed, she found herself humming the tune of the last waltz, her body still remembering the feeling of Ethan's arms around her. The first day of school arrived bright and clear. Flora stood nervously at the door of the schoolhouse, greeting each student as they arrived. By 9 o'clock, 18 children ranging from 6 to 16 had taken their seats, watching her with expressions varying from curiosity to skepticism. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I am Miss Daniels, and I am honored to be your teacher." The morning proceeded better than she had dared hope. The children, though rambunctious, were eager to learn, and Flora found herself energized by their questions and enthusiasm. When the school day ended, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction watching them scatter toward waiting parents or older siblings. As the last child disappeared down the road, Flora turned to find Ethan leaning against his horse near the schoolhouse steps. "How was your first day?" he asked. "Wonderful," she replied honestly. "They're bright children eager to learn, even the older boys who tried to test me at first." Ethan nodded, unsurprised. Children out here grow up taking responsibility early. They understand the value of knowledge. He hesitated before adding, "I thought you might appreciate a ride home." The simple gesture touched Flora deeply. "That would be lovely, thank you." As they rode through the golden afternoon light, Flora shared stories from her first day, little Sally Cooper's precocious questions about geography, the Harris twins' friendly competition in arithmetic, young James Fletcher's surprising knowledge of Shakespeare. "You found your place here," Ethan observed. "I believe I have," she agreed, "though I never imagined it would be in a one-room schoolhouse in Colorado." "Life rarely follows the path we imagine," he said. "Sometimes the unexpected turns bring us where we're meant to be." Flora thought about how true that was. Had Harold met her train as promised, she would never have discovered this new life, never have met the Morgan family, never have known the quiet strength of the man riding beside her. The weeks passed, and autumn gave way to winter. Flora settled into a routine of teaching during the week and helping at the ranch on weekends. She had intended to find lodging in town once she was established, but neither Amelia nor Ethan would hear of it, insisting the guest room was hers for as long as she wanted it. On cold evenings, the three would gather around the fireplace, Amelia with her mending, Flora preparing lessons or reading aloud, and Ethan cleaning tack or simply listening. These quiet domestic scenes became precious to Flora, who had never expected to find such contentment after Harold's betrayal. As Christmas approached, Flora worked with her students to prepare a holiday program for the community. The evening of the performance, the schoolhouse was packed with families eager to see their children shine. Flora watched proudly as her pupils recited poetry, sang carols, and performed a simple nativity play. Afterward, as families mingled and enjoyed refreshments, Vernon Hollister approached Flora again. "Impressive work with our young people, Miss Daniels," he said, standing too close for comfort. "You've proven yourself a valuable addition to Sweetwater. I'd like to discuss a permanent contract with you, perhaps over dinner tomorrow." Before Flora could formulate a polite refusal, Ethan appeared at her side, his presence solid and reassuring. "Pardon the interruption," he said with deceptive mildness, but Flora promised to help Amelia with Christmas preparations tomorrow. Hollister's expression darkened. You seem to have a habit of interrupting my conversations with Miss Daniels, Morgan. And you have a habit of not noticing when a lady isn't interested, Hollister. The tension between the men was palpable, and Flora quickly intervened. Thank you for your interest in the school, Mr. Hollister. I'm very happy with my current arrangement with the school board. If you'll excuse us, there are parents waiting to speak with me. She placed her hand on Ethan's arm and guided him away, feeling his muscles gradually relax under her touch. I appreciate your concern, she said quietly when they were out of earshot, but I can handle Mr. Hollister. I know you can, Ethan replied, but seeing him standing so close to you, he trailed off, his jaw tightening again. What? Flora prompted gently. Ethan's gaze met hers, the intensity in his eyes making her breath catch. It bothered me more than it should have. Before Flora could respond, they were interrupted by parents wanting to congratulate her on the program. The moment passed, but the look in Ethan's eyes lingered in her thoughts long into the night. Christmas morning dawned with fresh snow blanketing the ranch. Flora awoke to the delicious scents of cinnamon and coffee wafting up from the kitchen. She dressed quickly in her best dress, a deep green wool that Amelia had helped her make, and hurried downstairs. The kitchen was warm and inviting, decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons. Amelia was pulling fresh cinnamon rolls from the oven, while Ethan stoked the fire in the main room where a small pine tree stood decorated with handmade ornaments. "Merry Christmas," Flora said, her heart full at the simple beauty of the scene. Ethan turned, his expression softening as he took in her appearance. "Merry Christmas, Flora, that color suits you." After breakfast, they exchanged gifts. Flora had embroidered handkerchiefs for Amelia and crafted a leather bookmark for Ethan, using skills Amelia had taught her. From Amelia, she received a beautiful knitted shawl in soft blue wool. Ethan's gift came in a small wooden box he had clearly made himself. Inside, nestled on a bed of cotton, lay a silver brooch in the shape of a book. "It's beautiful," Flora whispered, touching it reverently. "Open it," Ethan suggested. To her surprise, the tiny book opened to reveal a miniature compartment inside. A small piece of paper was folded there, which she carefully removed and unfolded. In Ethan's neat handwriting were the words, "To new chapters and unexpected journeys." "Thank you for bringing light to our home." Flora looked up, tears pricking her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," he replied softly. "Just know that you have made this place brighter since that day at the train station." The rest of Christmas Day passed in a warm glow of contentment. The ranch hands joined them for dinner, and the house rang with laughter and conversation. As evening fell, most departed for the bunkhouse, leaving just the three of them by the fire. Amelia, claiming exhaustion, retired early with a knowing smile at Flora and Ethan. Alone by the firelight, they sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the flames dance. "I received a letter last week," Flora said finally. "From Harold." Ethan tensed beside her. "What did he want?" "He apologized for his behavior and asked me to reconsider joining him in San Francisco. His new arrangement apparently didn't work out as planned." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "And will you reconsider?" Flora turned to face him fully. "I sent my reply yesterday. I told him I've found where I belong." Their eyes met in the firelight, and something shifted between them, a barrier falling away, a truth acknowledged at last. "Flora," Ethan said, her name like a prayer on his lips. "I've been wanting to speak to you about something important." "Yes." She encouraged when he hesitated. "When I found you at that train station, I was just trying to help someone in need. I never expected." He paused, searching for words. "I never expected you would become so essential to my happiness." Flora's heart raced as he took her hands in his. "I'm not a man of fancy words," he continued, "but I know what I feel. These months with you have shown me what was missing in my life. If you could consider a future here not just as our guest or as Sweetwater's teacher, but as my wife, I would count myself the luckiest man in Colorado territory." Joy washed over Flora like a wave. "Ethan Morgan, are you proposing to me on Christmas Day?" A rare, full smile spread across his face. "I believe I am. Is that too forward?" "It's perfectly timed," she replied, squeezing his hands. "And my answer is yes, 1,000 times yes." Ethan drew her gently into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that felt like coming home. In that moment, Flora silently thanked the twist of fate that had left her crying on that train platform months ago. What had seemed like disaster had led her to this man, this place, this life that now felt more right than anything she had ever known. Spring came to Sweetwater Junction in a riot of wildflowers and new beginnings. On a perfect Saturday in May, Flora stood in the bedroom she had shared with Amelia while preparing for her wedding. The simple white dress with lace trim was the finest Sweetwater's seamstress could produce, and Amelia had woven wildflowers into Flora's auburn hair. "You look beautiful," Amelia said, adjusting the veil. "Ethan won't be able to take his eyes off you." "I can hardly believe this day is really here," Flora replied, touching the silver book brooch pinned to her bodice, something silver for the occasion. The little white church was filled to capacity with students, their families, and the entire Morgan Ranch community. As Flora walked down the aisle on the arm of Thomas, Ethan's foreman who had offered to give her away, her eyes found Ethan waiting at the altar. The look of wonder and love on his face was worth every tear she had shed that autumn day at the train station. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt, their vows an honest promise of partnership and love. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan's kiss held all the tenderness and passion Flora had come to cherish in him. The celebration afterwards spread across the town square, with tables of food, music, and dancing that lasted well into the evening. As twilight descended, Ethan led Flora away from the festivities toward a waiting wagon. "Where are we going?" she asked, laughing as he helped her up. "Home," he replied simply, "but I have something to show you first." He drove to a ridge overlooking the ranch, where the last rays of sunset bathed the valley in golden light. There, nestled among the trees, stood a new cabin, small but sturdy, with a wide porch and windows that caught the fading light. "What is this?" Flora asked, amazed. "Our home," Ethan explained, helping her down. "I've been building it these past months whenever I could spare time from ranch work. It's not fancy, but it's perfect," she interrupted, tears of joy threatening to spill over. "Absolutely perfect." Ethan swept her into his arms, carrying her up the steps and across the threshold. Inside was simple but comfortable, a main room with a fireplace, a kitchen area, and doors leading to what she presumed were bedrooms. Bookshelves lined one wall, ready for her collection of beloved volumes. "What do you think?" he asked, setting her gently on her feet. "Will it do for a schoolteacher and a rancher to build a life together?" Flora turned in a slow circle, taking in every detail, every evidence of Ethan's careful planning and hard work. Then she faced her new husband, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "It's everything I never knew to dream of," she said, reaching up to touch his face. "Just like you." Ethan's arms encircled her waist, drawing her close. "Welcome home, Mrs. Morgan." As his lips met hers in the first of many kisses they would share in their new home, Flora knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most painful goodbyes led to the most beautiful beginnings. The train that had carried her west had delivered her not to the future she had planned, but to the one she was meant to have all along, in the arms of a quiet cowboy who had taken her hand when she needed it most and led her home.